Welcome, everybody. Very glad to have you with us this morning. It's a bright and sunny Sunday morning in Chicago, Illinois, but we're being joined by people from all around the world, both on the panel and in the audience. Had a very rich day yesterday, our first day of the conference, Rise Up and Walk on Catholic Healthcare in the Global South and around the world. And today promises to be just as rich. The session this morning on Western and non-Western approaches to healthcare. Western healthcare has the hegemony and seems to kind of set the standard for global health, but not without ambiguities and problems. And so because of course that the fact that Catholicism is really more of a non-Western reality than a Western reality in the world today, we want to explore in this panel some of the confrontations, cooperations, conflicts between Western and non-Western approaches to medicine around the world. And so we have three presentations, one from Asia, one from Africa, one from Latin America, to help us explore those themes. So I will introduce each panelist just before their talk. And I'm going to start with Sister Dr. Maria Vasantha. Welcome, Sister. Sister Dr. Maria Vasantha is a sister, a member of the Congregation of the Sisters of the Cross of Cavanaugh, popularly known as the Holy Cross Sisters in India. She's also a medical doctor. She is the medical superintendent at Leonard Hospital and has a bewildering variety of roles at the hospital: medical superintendent, co-coordinator of the medical commission, director, consultant, and surgeon within the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology. And she's also proficient in the practice of contemplative meditation, has certificates in flower medicine, reflexology, and yoga. And that is going to be some of what she's going to be talking about this morning, this intersection of different types of treatment, different types of medicine. She follows an integrative approach to women's health and offers a variety of services to women at the hospital and also in the areas of village and school health programs, the area being Tamil Nadu state in India. So please join me in welcoming Sister Dr. Maria Vasantha.
Good morning. Greetings from India. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. William Cavanaugh, Center for World Catholicism and Intercultural Theology, for giving me this opportunity to be part of World Catholicism Week 2021. My topic for today is connecting Western and Eastern medicine from a rural and Christian perspective in India. I will be interchangeably using the word Eastern medicine and non-Western medicine. To understand it from Indian perspective, one needs to understand the history of Western and non-Western medicine in India. History of Western and non-Western medicine can be traced through different time periods in India. The timeline can be divided into three zones: the pre-colonial period, the colonial period, and post-colonial period. The pre-colonial period, this picture depicts how Indian traditional medicine was practiced in the pre-colonial period. Sages and sadhus were the authors of Indian traditional medicine. The pre-colonial period During the pre-colonial period, India had no relationship with the Western world. Indian traditional medicines were the only system present at that time, namely Ayurveda, Unani, and Siddha were the most ancient and said to be 5,000 years old. Ayurveda, Siddha, and Unani share similar concepts. The entire universe is made up of 5 basic elements. Ayurveda, Siddha, and Unani share similar concepts. The entire universe is made up of 5 basic elements. The body has perfect balance of these elements, and when the balance is disturbed, an unhealthy condition develops, which was called as illness. Ayurveda in totality means science of life, originated in Vedic culture. The science of Ayurveda was derived from Atharva Veda, a sacred text of Hinduism dating from the early Iron Age. It is one of the first Indian texts dealing with medicine. There are 2 treatises on Ayurveda, that is Charaka Samhita and Sushrut Samhita. Charaka and Sushrut are Sanskrit word. They describe primarily on therapeutics, and Sushruta Samhita describes various surgical procedures. This picture depicts how in the pre-colonial period, the Indian physicians operated without anesthesia before the arrival of Western medicine. Ayurveda stands to be the most ancient, most widely accepted, practiced, and flourished indigenous system of medicine. In India, Ayurveda is considered not just an ethno-medicine, but also as a complete medical system that takes into consideration physical, psychological, philosophical, ethical, and spiritual well-being of mankind. Herbs are the heart of Ayurvedic medicine. Flowers, roots, stems, and leaves of trees are processed into various forms to release their optimum potential. Siddha medicine. Siddha is a traditional medicine originated in South India. It is one of the oldest systems of medicine. It has been traditionally handed over through master-disciple relationship to become local healer. Siddha practitioners believe that 5 basic elements, earth, water, fire, air, sky, are present in food, and diet and lifestyle play a major role in health and in curing diseases. Unani. Unani, like Ayurveda, is based on the theory of the presence of elements in the human body. It was introduced in India by the Arabs and Persians sometimes during the 8th century. Soon after the introduction in India, the system got rooted in the country as an indigenous system of medicine. According to followers of Unani medicine, these elements are present in the body fluids, and their balance leads to health, and their imbalance leads to illness. The therapeutics consist of regimental therapy, diet, pharmacotherapy, and surgery. Pre-colonial period was considered as golden era of the Indian traditional medicine because most of the work related to basic concepts, enunciation of different principles, evolvement of different formulation occurred during this period. The colonial period, emergence of Western medicine and receding of traditional Indian medicine and significance of Western medicine was realized by the people of India. This picture depicts the colonial period. This picture depicts where the Indian rural population are treated by the Western medicine practitioner. History of Western medicine in India. In 1757, the East India Company established its rule in India, which led to the development of civil and military services. The first medical officers arrived in India to render medical services to the troops and servants of the company. During the initial years of their interaction, there was mutual respect, and European doctors were willing to learn from Indian physicians, especially on the treatments of tropical diseases. Botanical gardens were initiated to cultivate and study local plants that might be exported or used as cures. With the rise of rational thought in Europe and the increasing importance being given to observation and scientific process over tradition and wisdom, Indian medicine needed to be the background and continued to be popular in villages despite losing the support of the British. During the 19th and first half of the 20th century, under the influence of the British in India, the traditional systems were gradually replaced by Western medicine. With the arrival of Western medicine, Indian medical services efficiently coped up with deadly epidemics like the plague and cholera. Almost all the diseases prevalent at that time in India, like smallpox, leprosy, and malaria, were controlled successfully. There were very few epidemics in later years, and many of the diseases were almost eradicated. Officers and researchers of Indian medical services contributed a lot to the study and prevention of diseases. After independence of India, it was coexistence of or complementing of Western medicine with non-Western medicine. Revitalization of Indian medicine and significance of the Western medicine recognized by the people of India. It is a time period. The post-colonial period is the time period in which the significance and benefits of Western medicine was recognized, and also attempts were made to revitalize the Indian traditional medicines. Introduction of Western medicine in India have contributed greatly to the quality of life and longevity of millions throughout the 20th and 21st century. Western medicine treatments and approaches had improved health outcomes and lifespans in ways never imagined. Western medicine had significant impact on preventing deaths due to acute emergencies and communicable diseases in India. It was boon to the people of India. From the 1920s to the mid-1940s, provincial governments and popular leaders like Mahatma Gandhi made various efforts to reverse this trend. Colleges and other institutions were set up to revive the practice of indigenous medical sciences and integrate them with the country's main healthcare system. Given the benefits of Western medicine system over the non-Western medicine in critical care medicine and in epidemics, it was impossible to reverse this trend. Hence, the choice of India was to have coexistence of Western and non-Western medicine, with each having its own benefits. By and large, the domination of Western medicine continued as many Indians had entered into the stream of Western medicine for their healthcare needs and for medical education. Connecting Western and non-Western medicine from a rural perspective. To understand it from rural perspective in India, one has to understand the healthcare system in India in reference to the rural areas. This is a primary health center in one of the rural areas, which is underfinanced and not well managed. India's constitution guarantees free healthcare to all its citizens, but in reality, most healthcare expenses are paid directly out of pocket by patients and their families. Such expenditure pushes some 57 million people into poverty each year. The provision of healthcare in India is the responsibility of the state governments rather than the central government. There are 28 states and 8 union territories in the country. Since health is a state subject, disparities and inequities in the quality of care and access to health care varies widely, not just between states, but also between urban and rural areas. Due to non-accessibility and low quality of healthcare services of the public health, most of the people go to the private healthcare sector for their healthcare in India. Noticing the inequities of healthcare existing in the rural areas, the National Rural Health Mission was launched on April 2005 to provide accessible, affordable, and quality healthcare to the rural population, especially to the vulnerable group. As per National Rural Health Mission report, 700 million people live in 6,36,000 Indian villages. 66% of rural Indians do not have access to the critical care medicines. 31% of the population travels more than 30 kilometers to seek healthcare in rural India. This picture depicts where some of the rural population, they do not have healthcare personnel on daily basis. So when the doctor arrives, all of them crowd around the doctor to get their healthcare needs met. The World Health Organization recommends doctor-patient ratio of 1:1,000 in India, but one government doctor for every 10,189 people, or a deficit of 6 lakhs doctors. The nurse-patient ratio is 1:483, implying a shortage of 2 million nurses. This is a government hospital where, due to the non-availability of bed, 2 people sharing a single bed and others are waiting for their turn. The existing healthcare centers in rural areas are underfinanced, uses below quality equipment, low in supply of medicines, and lacks qualified and dedicated human resources. This is a government hospital where after the delivery, the postnatal mothers, due to non-availability of bed, they are seated on the ground using their own bedspreads. Underdeveloped roads, railway systems, poor power supply are some of the major disadvantages that make it difficult to set up a rural healthcare facility. Due to inadequate conventional treatment facilities, the poor financial resources of healthcare facilities, and the lack of awareness of healthcare needs and cultural beliefs, about 70% of rural population of India utilizes traditional medicine for primary healthcare. Here we see a woman selling traditional Indian medicine on the street and people buying from her. This is an exhibition conducted by Siddha practitioners displaying all Indian traditional medicines and medicinal plants, and people are free to buy from here. Cultural beliefs. Cultural beliefs of Indians play a vital role to utilizing non-Western medicine. India is known around the world to be a place of mysticism and strong cultural roots. In the depth of this culture lies a century-old traditional medicine that has been set by scholars and philosophers at that time. In India, since ancient times, the community healthcare system has been dependent upon the traditional medicines. This picture depicts a man bandaging the wound with the Indian traditional medicine. Cultural beliefs played an important role in supporting the primary healthcare needs of rural households, including home remedies, food, nutrition, midwifery, bone setting, ethno-veterinary practices, and other specialized local health practices. There is a cultural belief that neem leaves protects against infectious disease. You can see here neem trees are planted and neem leaves are hanged on the wall to be protected from infectious disease. A study was conducted on Asian Indians in the United States. The goal of this study was to better understand how Asian Indians' cultural values shape how Indians learn and navigate their healthcare in the United States. Findings and conclusion of this study gives a clear idea about the cultural beliefs of Indians regarding Western and non-Western medicine. Indians are a collective community. They honor a hierarchical system. They value traditional system of medicine, and they seek a connection between the mind, body, and spirit. There is a high level of family involvement during the treatment process, and at times they even defer decision-making to other members in their family. So if the family believes in non-Western medicine, it becomes the first choice of treatment. Even today, many elders within the Asian Indian community still believe in Ayurvedic medicine, the 6,000 years old tradition of healthcare from India, which provides individuals with a holistic approach to medicine by connecting mind and body. All the Indians participated in this study value Eastern medicine and have considered using this form of treatment at one time or another. When considering treatment options, non-Western medicine becomes a viable option for the Indians because of their knowledge and faith in traditional healing methods. Indians experiment with both Western and Eastern medical approaches when treating sickness. Belief in traditional healing methods making non-Western medicine not only a feasible option, but also an appealing option for the Indians when they are faced with an illness. Strong belief in Eastern medicine led some of these participants to start treatment with traditional medicine such as ginger, turmeric, lemon, and homemade brews. Some Indians moved to Ayurvedic and homeopathic medicine when they were not having success with Western treatments. Finally, in addition to valuing traditional system of medicine, Indians also utilize techniques that help them to maintain balance mentally, physically, and spiritually. One of the most common forms of the technique is yoga, especially Hatha yoga. Traditionally, This form of yoga is a complete yogic path, including 1 or 3 moral disciplines, physical exercise, and meditation. This form of yoga specifically noting not only its health benefits, but also the mental and spiritual satisfaction that the exercise brings. Hinduism advocates the use of subjective and experiential methods. The cultural beliefs of Indians on non-Western medicines are based on experiences, tradition handed over from the ancestors, faith in the family and in the community, and innate desire to connect to the body, mind, and spirit, and being born in the land of mysticism. My experience of connecting Western and non-Western medicine in rural India. Next. I am an obstetrician and gynecologist practicing in rural South India. I like to share 2 of my patients' experience. Mrs. X, she was coming to me for infertility. She was not conceiving. We evaluated her. She had polycystic ovarian disease, and her husband evaluation was normal. So I was treating her for 6 months and she did not conceive. In the following months, I spoke to her for some time and I found that she had a lot of anxiety and disappointment and hopelessness. I addressed her issue with flower medicine. The following month, she conceived. Yet another patient, she also came to me with infertility and she had polycystic ovarian disease. Other evaluations were normal and she was treated for 6 months. She did not respond. And when I took some time and spoke to her for some time, then she shared with me that she lost her only brother. So I addressed that emotion with the flower medicine, with allopathy medicine, and the following month she conceived. This is patient's experience. In my experience, I can't prove the effectiveness of flower medicine since it addresses the emotional state of the person, which is subjective and experiential. The effectiveness can be assessed through the feedback received from patients about their wellness and symptom-free interval. Many patients feel that non-Western medicine may help in coping with chronic illnesses for which conventional medicine offers no cure, only management. Next. On the whole, my experience about Indian traditional medicine is that it is effective in curing the chronic diseases like arthritis, asthma, sinusitis, low back pain, and dermatological conditions. I also have witnessed failure of Indian traditional medicine with the following disorders: endocrine-related illnesses, thyroid disorders, diabetes, hypertension, seizure disorder, and cardiac-related illness. Once again, a question arises about the need for complementing Western medicine with non-Western medicine. This is a study on the mystery of low COVID-19 mortality rate in India and Indian traditional medicine. This I would like to skip because after the second wave, the scenario is different in India. So I didn't want to present this. Effectiveness of non-Western medicine. The Ayurveda and Siddha system largely derive their knowledge base from traditional wisdom, not supported by a body of evidence as understood by the Western medicine practitioner. Though Ayurveda texts do describe several levels of evidence, they do not exactly match what Western medicine considers as good quality evidence, namely randomized controlled trials. Indian traditional medicine, other non-Western medicine, do not have a scientific evidence, unlike Western medicine, because historically, non-Western medicine practitioners rely on holistic approach towards the sick individual, and disturbances are treated on the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and environmental levels simultaneously, rather than a focus on the disease as in conventional medicine. Personalizing treatment intervention and outcomes for each patient is an approach consistently used by non-Western medicine practitioners. Two patients with sleeping problems presenting to non-Western medicine practitioner could receive two very different treatment regimens. Depending on the particular patient history, it is a whole person who is placed at the center of the treatment regime in addition to the presenting symptom or disease diagnosis. In non-Western medicine philosophy, this is known as treat the whole person. It is about integrating individual clinical expertise and the best external evidence in making decisions about the care of individual patient. A systematic review of 34 papers describing patient perception of clinical care concluded that complementary medicine consultation provided patients with experience of empathy, empowerment, and patient-centeredness. Jesus is a holistic healer. He was par excellence concerned with the whole person. He used traditional medicine methods to heal the sick, address the cultural beliefs, and credited the faith of the person to be healed. Following Jesus, the holistic healer, unmoved by his compassionate care to the sick, the Church in India focused on the accessible, affordable, and holistic healthcare to all, especially to the unreached. Church in India took a huge leap in addressing this reality in order to prepare the human resources to serve in the rural areas and reach the unreached. CBCI set up the first medical college in India to train Catholic nuns and Catholic boys and girls who promised to serve in the rural areas of our country. So on the whole, the Christian perspective, the Church integrates Western and non-Western medicine, complementing with non-Western medicine. Church offers and promotes holistic healing. Next. World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. This definition understands health as involving the whole person. It is holistic. Which path does one take to wellness? Western medicine focuses on pathology and curing disease, and also it is reactive care that treats disease and other ailments as they arise, but offers quick relief of symptoms and highly effective in acute emergencies. Eastern medicine, however, provides more preventive care. It connects the body, mind, and spirit and offers holistic healing. Many times, these whole body systems, when not working properly or in disharmony, can be the underlying cause of diseases. From a rural and Christian perspective, to achieve health as defined by WHO demands complementing of Western medicine with non-Western medicine. Strong cultural beliefs of the Indians on non-Western medicine, experiences of empathy, empowerment, and patient-centeredness experienced during the treatment process, inadequate conventional medicine facilities in the rural areas are the factors that call for an integration. Single case experimental design is promising to mainstream non-Western medicine with evidence-based approach.
Thanks so much, Sister Maria. That was really interesting. I really learned a lot, and you gave a really nuanced presentation of the relationship between physical and spiritual healing and Western and non-Western medicine. So thank you so much. We'll move now to Father Bernhard Udelhoven. And let me just say that as we hear the speakers, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A, and we will get to those at the end after all the speakers have spoken. Father Bernhard Udelhoven is a friend of DePaul. He's been up to DePaul once before. He was born in Germany, but has been in Zambia now for 24 years. He is a priest and with the Missionaries of Africa, and also has an MA in social anthropology from the University of London. And he's been working over the last couple of decades with a serious problem in parts of Africa, which is witchcraft and demonic possession and the kinds of social unrest that these accusations cause. And he's been looking at ways in which the church can help to heal some of these divisions in the community by neither, on the one hand, simply dismissing them as being superstition, nor on the other hand, kind of encouraging them and perpetuating the cycle of demonization. He has an incredible book called Unseen Worlds, dealing with spirits, witchcraft, and Satanism. And he has even more importantly than I think his academic work is the work that he's doing on the ground with a support group known as the Fingers of Thomas, which helps people resolve some of these conflicts in the community. So please join me in welcoming Father Bernhard Udelhoven. He will present via a video since he is in his parish in Zambia and the internet connection is not great. So we'll see his talk by video pre-recorded, but he will be with us live for the question and answer.
Hello everybody, my name is Bernhard Udelhoven. This is my second attempt of recording myself. I think and hope I'm slowly getting better in this process. I'm recording myself from Lumimba Parish in Zambia. And my presentation is about the healing ministry. I will share some of the dynamics that we, pastoral workers, encounter, especially the gap between physical healing and a corresponding spirituality that makes sense to people. The Church has brought many health initiatives to Zambia: hospitals, clinics, home-based care programs, nursing schools, many services for the disabled, and of course the outreach to the sick in all parishes. But what's about spiritual healing? I believe in this aspect the Church is not known in the way she would like to be known. Medical care in clinics and hospitals is largely based on the biomedical paradigm, which was very successful in Africa in combating infectious and acute disease. Often the Church identified with the biomedical paradigm and sidelined traditional approaches to healing. But the modern healthcare sector has no monopoly on healing in Africa. Here in Zambia, we have more traditional healers than registered nurses and doctors. This speaks for their success. We often notice, especially in times of crisis, that patients and their families hold very different ideas about sickness and the human body than the medical establishment. Their concepts root them better in an awareness of family, of morality and identity than modern medical and even Christian discourses that we employ. If Catholic translates with universal or with according to the whole, then Catholic healthcare cannot be fixed exclusively to the health categories of the Western industrialized world. At the same time, we are also aware that different concepts and models of sickness that people use in a pluralistic world are not always compatible with each other. They build on different premises and presuppositions. This poses the need for clarity and focus in the healing ministry. People appreciate and generally trust the modern health sector, especially in regards to established routine interventions. Nevertheless, Zambia also knows a long history of rumors that have linked the modern health sector since colonial times to conspiracy theories, in which international organizations use human blood extracted from Africans for sinister or magic purposes to obtain power, wealth, or health. Some may recognize in such images a distant memory of the terror and the nightmares of the slave trade that preceded colonialism. Today's healthcare system builds on Western notions of sickness and of the body. Zambian history with the West was ambivalent at its best. A crisis of trust is evident in these days of COVID. Many people here believe that vaccines are not safe, and some fear that Africa may be used as an experimental ground. The Church wants to create a safe space where the sick and their caring community can reach out to God. Trust is fundamental when we come to Christian healing. How do we generate or inspire trust? The quality of biomedical interventions is surely very important in this quest, but by themselves they cannot deal with the fundamental questions that sickness throws up. Sickness is disturbing and should be allowed to be disturbing, both for the patient and the caregivers. Let me run through some of the dynamics that we encounter in the healing ministry. The first one concerns secrecy. There's a part of sickness that a person shares with the outer world, and there are many other parts we do not easily share with anybody else. Before people look for help elsewhere, they first try to cure themselves. Drugstores are popular in Zambia, and obviously people use drugs in the way it makes sense to them, which does not always correspond with the small print of the package. Most people also know traditional medicines and herbs. Self-help is guided by the image that the person associates with his or her sickness. Here in Zambia, existential sickness is often concealed even from the marriage partner for as long as possible. If witchcraft is suspected, and here in Zambia it often is, the whole treatment may evolve in absolute secrecy so as to outwit the witch. The point I'm making here is that any doctor, health worker, priest or pastor in Zambia is often somehow in the dark about what people have already gone through in their healing process. Often we rely on guesswork and we rarely have all the facts on the table. If sickness incapacitates the patient, then the patient relies on the time and on the economic resources of family members. The burden of illness in Africa is shared among many shoulders. This also means that the patient cannot decide alone on the treatment options. Those who shoulder the social and economic costs of treatment have to be brought on board. It is obvious that the Christian healing ministry needs to focus as much on the accompanying family as on the patient. Any approach to healing is rooted in a theory. People in Zambia are usually not trained in modern biomedical vocabulary and models, but they certainly do not lack medical theories. People know that many forms of illness are caused by violations of cultural traditions and family morality. For example, a husband who commits adultery when his wife is pregnant is widely believed to cause the death of the unborn child together with the mother during childbirth. According to the underlying theory, husband and wife are one blood. Going out with somebody else means that blood mixes. When blood mixes, it causes the death of the innocent partner. Also, according to local theory, sexual activity makes a couple hot, ritually speaking. Small children and elderly people are cold. The fire on which food is cooked for them needs to be protected, else they catch a serious coughing disease, of which they may even die. Menstrual blood and other sacred life forces need to be handled with utmost care, else they bring medical disaster on the whole family. A woman who has had a miscarriage or who aborted a child may bring mysterious sicknesses to the people she greets. She is expected to sit numb and her husband to stay around the house until they are ritually released from this burden. My list of important cultural beliefs could go on and on. They may sound weird for many listeners, but here they make sense. They follow a logic, and people see that they actually often work. Such theories and models are largely dismissed by the biomedical establishment and also by the church as superstitious. It is important to acknowledge that these beliefs are linked to a religious system that safeguards family morality, which holds the extended family together. When people scrutinize each other along the lines of such beliefs, they are also making a point about morality, cultural identity, and belonging. Here in rural Zambia, many feel subject to a real spiritual force that links them to the ancestors, to tradition, and to the family. Very often, our modern health institutions are insensitive and sometimes even hostile to local cultural models of sickness and healing. Nurses call local people ignorant, but this evaluation is mutual. People in turn consider doctors, nurses, and also us priests ignorant and incompetent about the moral issues and family situations that people determine as the root cause of their illnesses. Some meaningful and respectful engagement with cultural notions seems absolutely necessary in the healing ministry. I am not advocating here that cultural beliefs should override biomedical knowledge, but that the systems engage with each other. Cultural notions can be used in the healing ministry to point out the moral questions and the concerns of belonging and of identity that people struggle with during their time of sickness. People greatly value the clinics and modern health facilities for most sicknesses: malaria, diarrhea, tuberculosis, HIV, vaccination programs, antenatal and postnatal care. People opt for the modern clinic and hospital, even if these are under-equipped and undersupplied. But people's experiences in the health facilities have not always been positive. Health workers and doctors are human. They can become irritated, lack time, misdiagnose, and they can fail in their duties, the more so in rural Africa, where there's very little supervision and control. In the developed world, people can inform themselves independently about risks and medical alternatives. In the developing world, people have not many alternatives to choose from. This ties the patient to the nurse or health worker in a much greater way. Medical knowledge becomes power. Treatment is often given on the basis of presumptions. For example, if a person here has fever, he or she is given malaria treatment, even when a malaria test comes out negative. It is presumed that the test did not work, which often happens, and tests for other sicknesses may not be available. A wrong diagnosis may not be a big deal for a person who lives nearby the clinic, but for those living far, coming back for a second checkup is often not even an option. The relationship between health workers and patient is often marked by frustrations. For example, many patients are not able to describe their symptoms of pain in accordance to the textbooks. Pain seems to be everywhere, and it seems to be present all the time. Health workers quickly reject people's own understanding of symptoms and sickness. If a visit to the hospital has been an alienating experience, it will be difficult to make sense of it in a spiritual way. The positive interaction between patient, his or her family, and the nurse, doctor, and health worker is absolutely critical in Africa in the process of developing trust. We often wrongly presume that such a positive relationship is there. But since in any hospital we have a long list of unfulfilled needs, it is tempting to concentrate on other things and neglect the quality of this interaction. Where people fail to find help in the clinic, they may look for a traditional healer. For a number of conditions, people actually prefer traditional healers over the hospital. While they deal with biological issues, they also tackle questions of bad luck, failure to find a marriage partner, or to obtain a promotion at work. Traditional healers are believed to have medicines that prevent a husband to perform with another woman, or that make a thief go mad. People may consult healers when they have a court case. Healers know of sicknesses that come through witchcraft or spells, or from the ghost of a former marriage partner. Hospitals cannot deal with these issues. In many ways, healers manage to engage the mind in the healing process and the mind of the accompanying family. This is not just a question of explanation. Actually, some healers explain to the patients very little. Sometimes they do not want to scare the patient about the gravity of an illness. What I mean is that traditional healing forces the patient to engage with the own body and sickness on a mental and also on a spiritual level. The patient may be requested to collect certain herbs at certain times in the forest. The healer may prescribe regular baths, steam baths, or other cleansing procedures, inside the house or in the bush, or to follow a specific diet, or undergo In many ways, the procedures of the healers are very demanding and engaging. Healing is not just a matter of swallowing red and yellow pills. The healers also address the problem of culpability. Maybe the sickness is the fault of the patient who has disregarded cultural obligations. Maybe a jealous witch has caused the sickness. Where things go well, healers facilitate the admission of guilt and the reordering of social relationships. Where things do not go well, and unfortunately this is also often the case, the assignment of guilt leads to witch hunts and sometimes even witch killings that divide a community in the healing process. As a church, we have always condemned the traditional healer where he or she engages in witch finding, but we have not managed to make witch finding redundant. For this to happen, we need to stay very close to people's concepts of health and sickness, especially with the moral dimension, and engage with it in a meaningful way. Today, many Christian churches provide an alternative to the traditional healer. Since the 1980s, faith healing has become very popular in Zambia. Prophets and pastors want to counteract sickness on the spiritual level. A demon may lurk behind a biological reality that will not show up in the microscope of the doctor, but in the dreams of the pastor. In some churches, faith healing may not look very demanding on the side of the patient. The sick person comes in front, utters a prayer request, waits for the pastor to lay on hands, tries to be open to the presence of the Holy Spirit, and after a short time goes back to his or her seat in church. But at other times, the demands of faith healing are very extensive and demanding, and they go beyond the expectations of the biomedical discourse. The patient has to pay tithe. He or she may be required to fast for an extensive period of time, follow common prayers for weeks and sometimes even months, spend a whole day in prayer on a mountain, and spend whole nights in singing and prayer together with other congregants. Again, such procedures force the patient to engage with his or her sickness extensively on a mental and also on a spiritual level. A point I want to stress applies to the traditional healer and also the Christian faith healer in Zambia. Patient and healer share an intersubjective reality in which supernatural forces mingle into natural affairs. God, demons, spiritual beings, or witchcraft are known by both patient and healer to be part of the problem and maybe also to be part of the solution. They are acknowledged by both as objective realities. We cannot dodge the question how we should deal with such realities in our healing ministry. The biomedical approach excludes them, and many of you who listen to my presentation will not believe in them. But they are obviously very important for people in Zambia who come to us for healing. Some postmodern writers argue that an African view of healing that builds on premises such as spirits and witchcraft has as much access to truth claims as Western biomedical thought. Personally, I'm not fully buying into this assertion. With regards to causal explanations, I don't see spirits and witchcraft on a par with modern medical concepts that could prove themselves across the international scientific community. Nevertheless, in the healing ministry, it is important to acknowledge that witchcraft and spirits embody moral voices about evil and about fundamentally wrong responses towards wealth and power. Also, witchcraft and spirits in Africa easily turn a private concern into a public concern. Spirits and witchcraft are very exciting. Everybody gets involved, everybody talks about it, and the personal and private concern of one individual becomes the concern of the whole community. Personally, I'm a skeptic. Nevertheless, I usually try to find a way of addressing the moral questions that witchcraft beliefs throw up. They lead me directly to the question of broken relationships and questions of belonging that the healing ministry needs to address. Now, what makes a healing ministry Catholic? I think when it is open to all fundamental aspects of experiences of illness, including the relational and the moral dimensions. At the same time, a Catholic approach will also imprint its own dynamics on healing, to which I now turn in the last part of my presentation. Obviously, any Christian approach will look at healing as part of a relationship with God. We implore God for healing. I cannot demand health from God. Health is a gift, however, that links me to God in the most amazing ways. Grace means that even in the face of pain, a person can still develop a sense of gratitude and trust. In Zambia, people often make a distinction between sicknesses that can only be cured in the hospital and other sicknesses that can only be cured by prayer. I think the Catholic understanding of healing wants to go beyond this dualism. All healing comes from God. Secondly, Catholic thought links health to salvation and to eternal life. Now let us be clear. If eternal life feels remote, vague, distant, futuristic, and unrealistic, it is totally irrelevant to the person's present concerns and needs. The question is, how do we link the call and prospect of salvation to the concerns of the present moment? In Africa, the prosperity gospel has opened up a way that links salvation, that understands salvation as the fullness of life, which must start here and now. Healing includes health, prosperity, victory in one's struggles, success in business, success in marriage, and on all levels of life. Whoever has been in Africa cannot remain unmoved by the success of the prosperity gospel. It gives people hope. But it also comes with problems. People easily build up an image of God's interventions that eclipses pain and death. Unfortunately, healing very often does not take place in the way we want. Here in Zambia, people die, and many of us die very young. I am very often at the funeral of somebody for whom we had prayed, and yet the person died. When a person is seriously sick, I believe in the healing ministry, we must not deny that death is part of every life. We must help the person also to accept death. Even when we pray for healing. So much so that death should even mark my life when I get cured. This brings me to another way of linking eternal life to the present moment. Namely, the question, what am I really living for? And what am I ready to die for? Death puts limits to the choices we can make in life. No death, no vocation. There exists something in my relationship with God that goes beyond my present life as I know it. I believe that any Christian healing ministry should help a person to become more in touch with his or her own life vocation. A third aspect of Catholic healing concerns the centrality of the cross. We never eclipse the cross, which is a physical experience. Jesus died in the body. The key concern for the healing ministry is to help the patient to reconnect with the own body, to allow the body to be a sacrament for a relationship with God, with others, and also with what is wrong in the world. In the biomedical discourse, pain is a very bad thing. The sick person is flooded with painkillers and anesthesia. I'm not advocating here some sort of masochism. When I am sick, I certainly want painkillers. What I try to say is that where the patient becomes alienated from the own body and feelings, healing tries to help the person to reconnect with the own bodily awareness. Also, when it is painful and uncomfortable. Pain is allowed to symbolize, the body is allowed to symbolize what is wrong. And we can learn in this regards a lot from African traditions of healing. Finally, Christian healing transforms the moral questions about blame into a question about Christian agency. Jesus was not satisfied to restore lepers to their former health. He wanted to transform them into new beings with a new sense of vocation and agency. Healing in Catholic thought cannot be limited to the restoration of health. Restoration means going back to a previous condition. The Catholic idea of healing is about transformation. The healed is becoming something new. And the community which is touched by the experiences of healing is also called to change. Healing, therefore, has always a political dimension. Again, here we can learn a lot from African traditions of healing, because they've never lost touch of the person's relationships, family, identity, morality, and sense of belonging. Hereby, I want to end my presentation. I have talked about some of the challenges that we encounter in the healing ministry in Zambia, and I have also talked about the challenges that we Catholics want to imprint on the understanding of healing. I have placed some examples into the written text that accompanies this presentation. I want to thank DePaul for having me in this conference, and thank you to everybody for listening.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bernhard. That was really fascinating. As always, you've shown how the beliefs are expressing more than just beliefs in witchcraft and so on, but about larger questions of morality and identity and sense of belonging. And the thing about the body as sacrament, I think, is really, really vital and really crucial. So thank you for that. And I hope we get to talk more about that in the Q&A session. So now we will move from Africa to Latin America to two medical doctors who worked together at the Hospital San Carlos in Chiapas, Mexico. And the Hospital San Carlos serves the indigenous communities of Chiapas. And there, these two doctors, Dr. Abraham Castañeda and Dr. Carolina Martinez, have developed programs for integrating indigenous beliefs with other kinds of medicine. Dr. Castañeda is a Mexican doctor, diabetes educator, currently based in Washington, DC, but has worked on human rights, community mobilization, peer education across the Americas. And he's been working for Save the Children, Bread for the World, Caritas International, the Mexican Secretariat of Health, and is the author of numerous educational manuals. Dr. Carolina Martinez is, until recently, the general physician at the Hospital San Carlos, also Mexican physician from Ciudad Juarez, and has worked with the Mexican branch of Dr. Paul Farmer's Partners in Health in the Sierra Madre Mountains of Chiapas, where they provided primary care through community clinics to the region's indigenous people, often underserved coffee farmer families. So we're going to see a brief 12-minute video from Dr. Martinez, and then Dr. Castañeda will address us live, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Hello to everybody. My name is Carolina Martinez. I am a general physician, and I worked at Hospital San Carlos for 5 years. I am no longer working there, and for the reason unable to be live with you today, but still very thankful for this opportunity to share a little of our experience and challenges in providing intercultural healthcare in a rural setting. Hospital San Carlos is a rural mission hospital located in southeast Mexico. It is in the southern state of Chiapas, in a small town called Altamirano, 2 hours away from San Cristobal de las Casas, which is a bigger touristic city, and 3 hours away from Tuxtla Gutiérrez, which is the state's capital, and about 7 hours away from the border with Guatemala. It has been working since 1975, and it is run by Las Hermanas de la Caridad. Disclaimer here, this presentation was, as you know, planned before the COVID-19 outbreak, and a lot of the services and amount of consultations have changed, but I decided to keep the presentation as it was to give an idea of how the hospital worked during better times. This last year has been, as for everyone around the globe, a big challenge for the hospital. There are a lot less patients seeking for medical attention for various reasons, mostly due to communities deciding to isolate themselves in order to stay safe, and some due to fear towards medical institutions fed by misinformation. Some of the services are for the moment not available due to resources being put towards COVID response, and also most of the volunteers and campaigns came from other countries, and international travel is not much of an option even to this day. So just so you can just keep this in mind during the presentation. The hospital has different services. Most of the work is done in outpatient general consultations. The staff is mainly general physicians and medical students in their last year. Here in Mexico, our last year of education is a social service year. Usually we are sent to rural communities to provide healthcare there. The most common diagnoses we found are infectious diseases. Tuberculosis is a big one. Diabetes, hypertension, heart failure due to Chagas disease or congenital problems. We also encounter many patients with end-stage cancer or with rare diseases as sclerodermia. We had a patient with Cartagena syndrome. Even when the diagnoses were made in other hospitals, we still had to provide some sort of healthcare for them. So specialists that came over were of great help with some of these more challenging cases. We also provide inpatient care with 52 beds for adults and children, and have an isolated area for tuberculosis patients. We also have X-ray machine, ultrasound, and basic lab work. We had different projects aimed to tackle some of the most pressing and forgotten areas, but are, as I said before, on hold for the time being, which are the mental health program, tuberculosis, and child malnutrition program. The tuberculosis program is still running, but with some services being cut. We also had surgical campaigns from international aid, as well as hospitalist volunteers. This is a very important service, as I said, for this population that otherwise has no means to get specialty care. Here in this photograph, you can see some of the traditional clothing of the area and a picture of our waiting room to give you an idea of the amount of work done daily. The beauty of this place is that it strives to provide intercultural healthcare services with quality and warmth. And we can see that in many areas, one of them being the architecture itself. The hospital was designed to be surrounded by nature with big open spaces and gardens, so patients could feel more at home than a cold brick tile building. It has more of a spa feel to it than an actual hospital. The staff is another important factor. Most of our nurses are local women and men that have been trained by the hospital itself as nurse technicians and also serve as translators. The main language spoken in the area is Celtal, but there are formal languages, Tocolabal, Chol, Totil, and Tzoque. So that is always a challenge. Doctors also, we received Celtal course to know basic words in the language and be able to communicate better with our patients. We try to incorporate traditional and spiritual practices respectfully. Patients and family can bring people over, being a pastor from another religion or shaman or curandero, to perform any rituals they see fit for the condition they have. Sometimes we even allow kind of consultations or hospital leaves to get traditional rituals to avoid discharge against medical advice. So, for example, with meningitis, we had a patient that his family was sure he was he had some kind of possession, so they wanted to go and see curandero. And we begged them for them to go and then come back so he could finish his treatment, his antibiotic treatment. And in that case, it worked for us. We allow them to sleep in the floor, since that is what they are used to do at home. We always have a family member on the ward. In regular hospitals, that is not possible. You can only have visitors during visiting hours. So that's something that people really appreciate. There are also celebrations held for local Catholic festivities. The biggest one being on December 12th, that is Dia de la Virgen de Guadalupe, where groups of antorchistas do pilgrimage between communities by foot, taking turns with a torch, and many go through the hospital to pay respect to la Virgen de Guadalupe. Some of the challenges the hospital faces are due to the diversity of the population we receive. People come from many different municipalities, and as I said before, different cultures and languages. People can travel anything from 4 hours to 1 day away by foot before being able to take any other transportation. People that are very deep in the jungle, taking into account that you are sick while traveling all these distances, so that is very hard for our patients. There used to be air transportation provided by the government, but that service has been canceled for the last 3 years. And here is a map of some of the places where our patients come. Another challenge we have to provide healthcare in the way we believe is best is starting out with a broken health system at a national level, and considering that Chiapas is one of the most vulnerable areas in the country, it is much worse here compared to other areas of Mexico. People just don't have anywhere else to go. And we find ourselves not only providing healthcare, but also seeking to advocate for patients that require to continue treatment in other clinics, or they have to travel to the cities, to the biggest hospital, and try to make sure they are treated with patience and respect. So we find ourselves having to fight for patients at many levels. There's a lot of discrimination, poverty, and fear. Government institutions tend to have a biased view of indigenous population, and they are rarely trying health policies often fail to get the results they seek by not taking such matters into their plans. Many patients prefer to die at home with dignity than to submit themselves to the horrors of being mistreated at bigger government clinics in the city. Another example could be the tuberculosis. We see that a lot of rural clinics don't want to report that they have TB patients because it implies a lot of work, a lot of paperwork. So in the last 5 years, Dr. Cesar Martinez, who was in charge of the program, worked very hard on creating connections with government officials to report and look over patients' treatments and make sure they receive their medication for free and are taken care of directly in their communities and abide to the current laws. There's also the issue with the high costs of traveling outside their communities. People here make around 25 American dollars a week if they have a good week, so they just don't have the resources to get the help they need most of the time. And as you know, medicine is full of bureaucracy, so we have a lot of problems with this type of patient that requires specialty care. Sometimes we have made partnerships with private clinics to get evaluations to speed up the process. And this is very hard, especially with cancer diagnosis. Most of the time, there's not much we can do because they come in very end stage already. But it is very, very hard for patients that need any kind of specialty care to be able to get it. It is immensely sad that people keep dying from being born in a certain place with a certain amount of money or speak another language, and I believe all of us can agree to that. So how intercultural approach to health makes us different, makes the hospital different? I think trust is very important in any kind of healthcare intervention. It will always bring better outcomes. So one big reason for people to have trust in the hospital is the religious aspect of it. Even when people practice other religions, the hospital is always open to people to perform any rituals or prayers that they see fit for their sick relative. And another important thing is that we respect the important factors in the culture. Now, family is a very important thing for Tzatla culture. Usually any decision must be talked through with the entire family. So we find ourselves talking to 15 family members, and usually the eldest son or man in the family will make the final decision. So we seek to respect these views and have patience in waiting for these decisions to be made. It can take anywhere from 1 to 4 days for the family to decide if they want some type of treatment or intervention or procedure or referral. So we take the time they need. Live directly traditional remedies or plants, patients use them frequently, so we try to respect such views and let them continue the treatment along with the medical treatment we're giving them, unless it is medically not advised. I truly believe the work the hospital does is a good example of how we can merge different cultures, traditional practices, different religions, and also try to bring the most up-to-date medical care we can, given the resources we have. And with this, we come to an end. Hokolawalik, which is thank you in Tzeltal. I am immensely happy of the time I spent working there and all the personal and professional experiences I gained during this time. And now I leave you with Dr. Castañeda, who will talk more about traditional medicine. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Dr. Castañeda?
Hello,
Abraham,
hello.
Please go ahead.
All right. Thank you, everyone. My name is Abraham, as you notice now, and this is my presentation. Also, I am today. Also, I am a patient. I'm enthusiastically prostate cancer survivor since 2017, and this is my presentation. Extermination of the native peoples began with the accidental encounter of the New World by Christopher Columbus in 1492. And he was looking for a commercial route to the Indies, and this is why they mistakenly call us Indians. Spanish mercenaries sought gold, precious stones, the new land, and new slave subjects for the crown of the King Carlos V. Mercenaries exterminated more than 80% of the entire native population in the continent, murdering astronomers, mathematicians, botanists, religious leaders, and protectors of the earth. Then called us dirty savage, devilish pagans, uneducated, sinful animals, and filling us with shame. In the Caribbean islands, the natives were all murdered. In the continent, they remained hidden from slavery and extermination. They were forced to take shelter in the worst geographical, economic, and social conditions. Nowadays, indigenous people are now in reservations, resilient, and ignored by all current governments in the American continent. On January 1st, 1994, the Indigenous Zapatista Army of National Liberation, ECLN, began an armed movement against the government. The ECLN supported the innumerable peaceful demands for justice and dignity for other native communities of Mexico. They were against systemic cultural extermination, demanding respect for the customs, autonomy, and the right to better opportunities for education, health, housing, and citizenship. On December 23, 1994, the United Nations General Assembly decided to celebrate August 9th as International Indigenous Peoples Day. But it wasn't until the end of the 90s, at the fin of the 2000s, that the American states and the United Nations consolidate human rights for native people of the American continent. It took for them 500 years. However, according to the National Institute of Geography and Informatics of Mexico in 2015, marginalization and poverty measurements show us that international declarations are almost void. They are nothing but words on paper, because native peoples continue to live in the worst economic and social conditions, and their human rights are constantly violated. The 2015 INEGI census denounces a dramatic reduction from 20 to 12 million natives, and what used to be 200 native languages are now only 68. Health systems in Mexico. There is 3 health systems: biomedical model, legally recognized, traditional medicine, and self-attention. Biomedical system is part of the public and private health systems. It is recognized by being scientific, academic, legal, and representative of the Western culture. It is the global medical model since the end of the 18th century. Biomedical system refuses non-Western healing options. It's imposed on different societies and cultures. And his medical language is not easy or intuitive, both for the patient and in society. The health service can be a right of workers, but even so, it is not considered a human right. Traditional medical system, disease is perceived as a break in the natural and social order. A person becomes ill because they have transgressed some established norm in the biopsychosocial balance. Self-attention system, the population exercises this the most to diagnose, attend, control, prevent, and cure diseases. Western or alternative professional healers do not intervene. This model historical is the basis of the previous ones, and grandmothers and mothers mainly pass it on the knowledge from generation to generation. Self-care is the most recurrent among poor urban and rural communities due to the marginalization, because healing at home saves more money than any other external therapeutic resource. Mexican herbalism has been documented for centuries, even for the conqueror Hernán Cortés. He describes very well at his second letter of relationship sent to the Carlos V around the 16th century. Mexican herbalist has been very well documented in many documents in many centuries. Until today, in the biggest Mexican colleges or universities, ethnobotany and medicinal plants is taught as a master's degree. Amid an economic crisis, the Mexican health system faces the challenge of achieving universal coverage on 100%, and service quality and warmth are a permanent claim to public and private proposals. By law, healthcare in Mexico must be free to the entire population. However, the permanent marginalization and extreme poverty today affect 8 of 10 indigenous people. The life expectancy in the poor and indigenous is 7 years shorter than the average of the country. On this slide, you can see that Mexico is the homeland for the largest number of native people, almost 13 million. They also have the worst conditions of social inequity, and in terms of health, acute and not communicable diseases are combined as main cause of mortality. Same situation in at the end of the 90s and the first decade of 2000s, the native population has a worse level of access to food, like you notice here. And in terms of quality of housing, it's a really bad. Still, we have people with no plumbing, with no drain systems, with no electricity, dirt floor, and still they're using wood stove. Same situation is repeated in education. In the native population over 15 years old age, there are high percentage of illiterates. Likewise, in health, the native community is more dependent on a deficient health service of the state, of the government, and less access to health services due to labor law, and much less to private health services. Ethnomedicine is holistic. Disease is an imbalance of the spirit, mind, body, and environment. The origin and detection of the diseases are recognized if they come from cold or heat, and by the type of pulse. The raw materials of ethnomedicine comes from forests, oceans, animals, insects, eggs, plants, juices, infusions, herbal baths. And to elevate spirit, soul, mind, remove bad airs, remedies are made with candles, incense, liquors, stones, and the power of prayer to heal, separately or combined. In the native communities, the doctors, Ticiti, shamanes, or iloles are still present and enforced to solve many health problems. I was surprised to see them treat many health problems successfully. For example, I saw them rub feet with oil and banana leaves to control fever, the pulp of green tomatoes heated in a comal and gently apply it to the throat to cure tonsillitis, the use of powdered coffee to control bleeding from machete accidents, the power of prayer to relieve stress, crisis of anguish, and improve mood and spiritual words to help terminally ill patients. I saw them too, the midwives, using Temazcal bath and massage to change the baby's position before the delivery from bridge position to cephalic position. I saw them using pumping seeds to treat heartburn and indigestion, prickly pear cactus to control hyperglycemia, chia plant against tuberculosis. Traditional medicine is the first option for native people with inexpensive ingredients, without laboratory tests, drugs, hospital procedures, and other expensive treatments. The state of Chiapas is located on the south of Pacific of the country. Is the border with Central America, and it is the home of 1.5 million natives of various ethnicities, such as Soques, Tzotziles, Choles, Celtales, Lacandon Caribes, Tojalabales, Mam, Mocho, Cachiqueles. And here in this little red bottom is Altamirano. Is the place of the Hospital San Carlos in Altamirano, Chiapas. Chiapas with highlands, rainforest, long Pacific coast, abundant natural resources such as uranium, oil, gas, fresh water, and the ancient Mayan culture During the last 3 decades, neoliberal policies and corruption have plunged the population into sustained poverty with terrible indicators of quality of life. This is the CWCIT Declaration of Health. In 1974, it was an indigenous Congress led from the San Cristobal de las Casas, Chiapas, the Catholic Church. I would like to read everything, but I guess for condition of time, I'm just focused on the first paragraph. The doctors are concentrated in the cities and never go out into the countryside. They ignore the CWCIT language, they do not know our customs, and they hold great contempt for the indigenous. And the last paragraph, additional medicine is very expensive. Additionally, medicine is very expensive. It is a business. Sometimes we only have money to pay the tab, but not to pay the medicine. Defective and all medicine is sold to us. Therefore, we do not trust the medicine of the doctors. It was in 1974, CWCIT community. Annually, hundreds of young doctors are sent to work in health centers, rural medical units, and hospitals located in the middle of indigenous territories. But without having a slightest idea of who the indigenous people are, their cultural habits and practices, their resources to survive, their community strengths, and their constitutional rights, the indigenous people are for young doctors an unknown civilization. San Carlos, my colleague, Dr. Carolina explained it, it's in a rural area, and it is preferred by natives with different religious beliefs. They feel welcomed, respected, and can communicate in multiple languages. In San Carlos, I was in charge for studying the direct observation therapy, DOT, program to control and cure pulmonary tuberculosis, and also was in charge to start the community health system for the municipality, which includes the bilingual training of more than 15 volunteer native health workers to reach primary community health care. Activities coordinated completely with the government, and TV.DOT was successfully presented in various scientific congresses. In addition, we also supported traditional medicine with the Organization of Indigenous Doctors of the state of Chiapas. In San Carlos, the sisters taught me values of brotherhood, action for humanity, and bioethics. San Carlos is not a bureaucratic hospital, which means it's not cold and impersonal, like many governmental and private hospitals are. San Carlos is a house for all who ask for help and for those who want to help. In conclusion, there is too many, but I'm trying to be brief. Western medicine continually demonstrates progress and documents the efficacy of its results. But even though Western medicine is globally recognized, the worst health records are always common in the world's poor. Western medicine does not achieve universal coverage, needs expensive procedures, and it is not affordable for all. Western medicine often is called technical, dehumanized, and strongly commercial. Native communities still do not receive full quality and warm care after 500 years. Now, people are looking for natural treatments, non-toxic, and at a lower cost. New public health policies are required to stimulate the equitable distribution of health personnel. Western medicine and ethnomedicine should be part of the curricula in medical schools to merge them in order to achieve humanized health services. Ancient and current civilizations showed that the health is a balance with mind, body, spirit, and environment for the continuity of our species. We cannot be oblivious to the environment in which we subsist. San Carlos Hospital is an excellent example of accessible care for poor people and humanitarian care as a human right, offering warmth, quality, and dignity for those who deserve it and need it most. The COVID pandemic showed us how fragile and vulnerable we are, especially in disadvantaged communities. Today, for many, money is more important than humanity, more important than God. If you don't have money in Mexico, you don't have money, you don't have an education, a house, food, clothing, and you cannot pay for health services. Without money, you are nothing, nada. Why so much inequality? Something is not right. Something we're doing wrong. We are annihilating ourselves. Catholic, sorry, Catholic must fight for hope and act now. There is no time to waste. We, the native people, have not given up. We won't give it up either. The native son, the good God, the Son of God, who walks with the oppressed, with the poor, a God of hope. I'm sorry. Pocolahuelicta, Pisilik, Tlazot, Kamati, Huelmiac, and Nahuatl, my own language. Thank you all. Gracias a todos. And permit me to introduce this brief, new video. Okay, well, this is it. Thank you so much again. It is all yours, Dr. Cavanaugh.
Thank you so much, Abraham. That was a really beautiful and moving talk.
Thank you.
And I'm impressed by how much of this is about agency. You know, we give our agency over to experts who seem to know better, but so much of your approach to medicine is letting people have agency back. If they want to sleep on the floor, you let them sleep on the floor. And I'm impressed as well about how communal medicine is. And that, I think, is one of the things that unites all three of the talks that we've just seen, is the involvement of the community and the families. And finally, your very moving ending on a God who kind of suffers with us and accompanies us. And I think that's, again, another thing that really unites all three of the presentations. So we have just about 15 minutes for question and answer. So those of you in the audience, if you'd like to ask a question of our panelists, please do put it in the Q&A function, and I will ask as many questions as I can in the time remaining. But we have a question here, and this may be a question from Abraham to the rest of the attendees. But the question, given the role of the church in the colonial history of India, Zambia, and Mexico, what is the responsibility of the church to ally with these indigenous communities today? What can Catholicism contribute to this integration of Western and non-Western medicine? So that's an open question for our three panelists.
Well, yes, this is a very, very good question. Yes, I guess today the compromise is to walk together. The compromise, the church needs to stay very close to the native community, and also looking for partnership and solidarity with many other actors. Governmental actions, they are necessary, and we must to show our best practices in the field, because sometimes the government activities, they are short, they are not with warmth, and they are thinking that everything is a record or a kind of political compromise, but they are sometimes far from the health human rights. And this is the first thing that I would like to recommend for all the interventions on the field. We must to get the tonic of the human rights in every action, because in that way we found the best path to get better results.
Yeah, myself, maybe I can try to answer from the Zambian perspective. I don't know, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, here in Zambia, the church is Zambian. All the bishops are Zambian. 90% or more of the priests are Zambian. It is a Zambian indigenous church, but we have a heritage. We have a heritage, and traditions have been sidelined. They have been rejected. They have been placed in the irrational sphere. And so even the church, even though it is Zambian, it is still in that heritage of not treating it really as equal. And I think also in the church, we have often, we feel superior, maybe through our training, and of course theology is very much a Western theology, and we feel like superior to the local notions, those of the grandmother you talked about, and we quickly reject it. And I still think that as a church we do have a responsibility to engage with this. And there are some initiatives in Zambia. One, interestingly, comes from missionaries, those who actually started the Christian faith. Like there is a center in Zambia founded by the Missionaries of Africa. I worked in it for 5 years, and that tries also to deal a bit with this responsibility, which as missionary societies we feel we have. So that actually sometimes those things need to be spearheaded somehow, but yeah, it's definitely a big task still ahead.
I appreciate the Indian Church for its work towards health and healing ministry. I already elaborated in my presentation how the rural areas, the healthcare system is suffering. Most of the private sector, they do not come to the rural area, and where indigenous people are there, they don't respond. They are crowded in urban areas. Feeling the need of people in the rural areas, the church in India trains sister Catholic nuns, doctors and nurses. We have around, a church in India started a medical college, which gives special preference for sisters. So we are around 1,000 sister doctors who are working in the remotest area of India. In any remote areas, if you go, you will see either a sister doctor or a sister nurse serving the indigenous people. So church in India has, to a larger extent, it has contributed a lot to the healing ministry of Jesus and the health.
Wonderful, thank you. We have another question from Susan Nedza. This is a question specifically to the Chiapas doctors. Abraham and Carolina. But it also could be a question for Bernhard and Maria. If you use volunteers, I don't know if you do, but she's asking if you could elaborate on how you've integrated volunteers into your model of care and comment on how you designed the model.
Well, they permit me to be the first. There is a link, there is huge possibilities to be there volunteer internationally and nationally also. And this is another fresh part in San Carlos experience, that many doctors from many parts of the world are going there to be volunteers, and they are learning also. We have a very different system of education, and sometimes we, the Mexican doctors, we are teaching the foreign doctors, but also the foreign doctors also teaching us, and also to the field, to reach the community. It's a huge opportunities to be part of these initiatives and this permanent job. Spiritually and technically, it's a good place, and San Carlos is a good place to do an excellent response to the people who need it most.
Okay, great. So we just have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to get to as many questions in the Q&A as I can. There's one from Branka Gabrich asking all of the speakers, how would you explain the difference, or is there a difference between Catholic holistic approaches to health and indigenous holistic approaches to health? What are the similarities and what are the differences in your particular contexts?
Well, maybe for Zambia, there is not really a specific Catholic approach. Catholic is more like, I would understand it, it's an offer of salvation through our faith, and it has a dimension of body and soul. And if I look at Zambian approaches, they also look at health in a very similar way. They have a relationship to the ancestors, to the community. I think there are really many links. The question is, like, from the, if you speak of Catholic understanding, it is a theological question, how we have to develop tools to engage with each other, so that we actually understand what we really mean and where we are going to. And maybe we don't always have the tools available. Our tools are outdated, maybe, in the way how we relate to Zambian concepts of health, of the body, of spirits, which are often very relational understandings. And we have sometimes a different way in the Catholic Church of understanding those realities. And I think there needs to be a lot of dialogue. But generally speaking, we want the same. We want health in body, in mind, and in the community, and with God, with creation, the cosmos. We want the same, and should find also ways of working together.
Thanks. Abraham or Maria, would you like to respond to that as well?
Yeah, in India, the majority of the people are practicing Hinduism. Hinduism has a very strong roots of connecting body, mind, and spirit. Whereas in the Catholic approach, we do not have, we don't look at it in the way mind, body, spirit. We look at it as a spiritual healing. Initially, there were a lot of resistance from the Catholic Church and the bishops to accept some of the methods that are used in Hinduism, which offers wholeness and healing. For example, yoga, vipassana, these were not accepted by Catholic Church. But today, there are Catholic priests who has integrated, and he has started an ashram where they offer yoga spirituality Indian Christian Vipassana meditations are conducted. So there is a openness from the church to accept the other methods and integrate it.
Yes, I fully agree with all of you, and I saw a lot of similitudes within these three places. And well, yes, I would like to say that Native communities still are resilient. They don't feel very trust in all the things that come into the field. They need to do an observation. They need to feel compañeros. They need to feel like partners and confident. So they are resisting. They are with some to learn from them. A lot to learn from them. That in likewise we have the opportunity to teach them. So this kind of partnership between societies, between cultures, they need to be the new face to work and health, because it's spirit, mind, body, environment, all of them are related, and we are forgotten. And at Western medicine, we are forgotten some parts of this that is very important from the Native communities to remind us how important is to see each other as colleagues, as a partners in the field, to find the best options for the people.
Wonderful. Thank you, Abram, Maria, and Bernhard. We have lots more to talk about and more questions in the Q&A, but unfortunately we're at 11 o'clock. Hopefully we can continue some of the conversation in the coffee break, which is a separate Zoom session. But I really want to thank our three presenters. This has been very inspirational and moving, not just from an intellectual point of view, but also just seeing the work that you're doing on the ground with people has been very inspiring to me, and I think the rest of our audience. So thank you for your presentations. Thank you for your work. And we'll look forward. We had a question in the Q&A. Let me remind everybody that all of these presentations will be available on our website within a couple of weeks. And we'll also produce a volume of essays from the conference that'll make a lot of this available as well to inspire further work, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Thank you again, Maria, Bernhard, Abraham, and Carolina, for your wonderful presentations.
Amazing work, Bernhard.
It's a privilege to be here.
Amazing work, Maria, and thank you so much, Dr. Cavanaugh. Thank you so much.
Thank you.